So today we'll be looking at the Magach 3. I hope it's a good tank.
Ist geworden sehr freilich, ist geworden sehr freilich, Eli Melech. Hat Leute gedammt Fehlen und hat dann gedammt Brillen und geschickt noch die Fiedler auf die Zwei. Und aus der Fiedel, dicke Fiedler, halben Fiedel, dicke Fiedel, doppeln Fiedel, dicke Fiedel, doppeln See. Und aus der Fiedel, dicke Fiedler, halben Fiedel, dicke Fiedel, doppeln Fiedel, dicke Fiedel, halben See. Ist geworden noch mehr freilich, ist geworden noch mehr freilich, Eli Melech. Und die Raub gemacht auf Tolle, mit den Schaubers raubt auf Tolle und geschickt noch die Feigler.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty good. Although, not as easy as you'd think it'd be. See, to understand this tank's playstyle, I decided to not watch any kind of reviews on it, and I just bought it and then spent an entire day playing it, like literally an entire day. And what I found is I was playing the games and I was getting my ass kicked over and over again. You see, it sits at this nice 7.7 matchmaking bracket, and I can imagine a lot of people are buying these tanks to try to grind the Abrams, and a lot of people would be playing their Leopard 1s to try to get to the Leopard 2K, and so it's a very saturated matchmaker. And I was playing this vehicle thinking that I was complete trash. I thought that all my skill had just gone and that I was just the worst player in the world. But then I realised I was playing the vehicle wrong. You see, I had it in my head from this gun. By the way, this gun sounds so much better now compared to how it used to. It used to have this sort of whoosh sound. It still has that sound, but they've added more of a boom to the gun. You know, the Royal Ordnance L7. I am used to this gun because this is the same gun that is on the Leopard 1, which I've had for about 2 years now. However, I never played the Leopard 1 seriously, and so I've never unlocked Heat FS on it. I know, surprise, surprise, it's a rank 4 modification. It's an absolute bastard to get unless you sit down and you grind all day. But what I found from this vehicle is I've actually learned how to use the Heat FS correctly on the L7 gun. APFS, it's not even APFS-DS, it's just APDS, and APDS on the L7 is just complete trash. Like, unless you're playing it on the 7.0 British tanks with the Centurion Mark 10 and maybe the Vickers, that would be acceptable. But on a lot of these tanks, I would bounce APDS off the front of the Leopard 1, and that to me is completely unacceptable. The fact that a King Tiger is resistant to the APDS rounds, I mean, it just shows how high performance sloped armour is in this game compared to, you know, anything else. So, at least against the meta, you know, you will not be using APDS out of this gun, put simply. However, that's basically the one upside to this vehicle. You see, you have, when they were marketing this tank on the War Thunder, you know, forum, or the dev blog, sorry, they were marketing this vehicle as like a pattern tank, which is what it is. It's essentially an M48 pattern hull with an upgraded Continental engine, and then they've taken off the cupola, the tumor cupola, as I like to call it, replaced its 50 gal with a little pintle mounted Browning 30 caliber machine gun, which it gets 2 of, And of course the main difference is they replaced the 90mm gun with the Royal Ordnance L7 105mm gun. Now, this is your sort of main crux. You see, your firepower is just as good as everyone else's, because all the opposition you fight, except for the Russians, have the same gun. You know, the Japanese that you'll fight sometimes have the L7, the Leopards that you'll fight on a pretty much matchly basis, L7. It's all the same gun. So you've at least got an even playing field. The difference is, however, is that your tank is actually probably the weakest in terms of what it can do. Someone else said that, like, with the Leopard and the AMX-30, they've got mobility. They don't really need the armour, per se. This tank doesn't have good armour. It can be situational, but generally 88mm guns can go through you at like 1.5 kilometers away. So don't rely on your armour to protect you, especially against heat FS or any of the modern ammunition. But honestly, this tank was sold as if it was like a, you know, a more rugged, low profile pattern that was meant for, you know, frontline combat. And that's honestly not the case. If you fight with this thing on the front line, it has some capabilities, but generally you will probably die, because that's what happened to me a lot. You don't have the speed of the Leopard or the AMX or even the STB or any of those tanks. You don't have their speed and agility, although you are somewhat agile when it comes to turning your turret and your vehicle, but you don't have that speed. When you're coming up against the Russians, you don't have that somewhat usable armor, if you understand what I'm saying. You're sort of a bastard child, basically. You don't know what you want to be. And I found that actually one of the most effective methods of using this tank is parking it on top of an Overwatch position and supporting your team with long-range fire. Because the L7 is good for one thing, which is, you know, long-range fire. Heat doesn't lose penetration over distance. It has an extremely good rangefinder, which works very quickly. Once you find your range, just dot it in and fire. And honestly, it sort of sounds strange to say this, but it's not. Yeah, it's not really a. It can't really flank, but at the same time, you don't want enemies paying attention to you. You want to be out of their line of focus, and if you are, you want to have sufficient cover to deal with that, and then you've got to neutralize them quickly, because if people know about this tank, they're going to shoot at it and it's going to be dead. After all, you want to remove a 105mm heat slinger off the enemy team, so why wouldn't you? So honestly, I found that the best way to play this vehicle, find spots on maps, especially like corridor control or Overwatch positions. I'm not talking about fully camping, or maybe some people would consider this fully camping, but find positions that you're useful to your team. Then I won't consider you a camper, because when you're useful to your team, providing Overwatch, doing these things, you'll be right. I've had games where I've been providing Overwatch for the past 10 minutes, leave my position, then die immediately because someone spotted me and knew where I was, and I just died instantly. So to me, that's a lesson not to break contact and not to break that sort of mindset. You've really got to stay sort of not really hidden. I can't think of the word for it. You don't want to draw too much attention to yourself, but that's sort of a paradigm with most vehicles. Like, it's not a frontline assault vehicle. You don't really have options to deal with flanking and things like that. Like I said, your armor is damn near non-existent. However, you do have a slight advantage when it comes to dealing with enemy aircraft, so it's a blessing and a curse. Unlike the Leopards and all that other stuff, you're not as vulnerable to air attack as I've noticed. Your armor is enough to block some bombs that detonate that would otherwise kill Leopards and other vehicles like that. However, unlike your American brethren, you don't get a 50 caliber machine gun on the roof to deal with enemies. In fact, this is probably one of the few American medium tanks that don't have a 50 caliber machine gun. But yeah, well, that's all I've really got to say on the gameplay aspect of the vehicle. Obviously, there it is, another part, which I will be uploading shortly. But yeah, other than that, I believe that's all the advice I can give, and depending on your playstyle, I'm not sure whether I'd recommend buying this vehicle or not. On one hand, it would be good to get if you're going for the Abrams tank. However, that money could also be spent on a talisman for, you know, a mainline vehicle. I bought this vehicle purely because I was stuck at rank 3 for the US. I was just breaking into rank 4. So that's the main reason I've done it. I've now understood how the vehicle plays. Some people might pick this up and play it wrong, because another factor is the 7.7 matchmaking for the allied teams is probably the biggest scum pit of lack of just complete amoeba players are currently magnetized towards 7.7. So it's creating this very selfish environment where I don't really care about teamwork anymore. All I seem to really care about is getting kills and then leaving the match with a positive kill-death ratio, because honestly, trying to support these teammates knowing that they won't do the same, it's created this sort of semi-toxic environment, and I just refuse to play in it anymore, honestly. So yeah. Well, other than that, those are just my thoughts and opinions. You're obviously going to be after a little history video, so I'll be uploading that in part 2, talking about what this tank actually was and how it served in real life. So yeah. Well, anyway, that's about time, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It's been your boy Garrett G Gaming here, and I hope to catch you guys next time.
No longer having